Hi, my name is Liz Barbet, and I'm a student in leadership development. And for this assignment, I had the opportunity to interview Simon Smith, a managing director and the co head of the Global Industrials Group at UBS, a Swiss bank. I chose to interview Simon because a lot of the steps that he took to get to the position where he's in are steps that I hope to one day follow. I hope to go into investment banking after college, and Mr. Smith has been incredibly successful in this field. Within his section of the bank, Mr. Smith is in one of the highest positions and he's highly revered throughout the whole company. He oversees a wide variety of strategic and capital transactions and is constantly working on building a client network. Even more so than his work ethic and his credentials, I wanted to interview Mr. Smith for his personality. I believe that he exemplifies what it means to be a leader within banking. He is someone who is quick witted, he's kind, but he also knows how to get the job done. And ultimately, that's the way that you build clientele, and that's the way that you get people to trust you. And that's really how I view leadership, or I view an aspect of leadership. And from other people that I've spoken to in the investment banking industry, they will constantly tell you that in investment banking, it's equally what you know as much as like how you are. Basically, like your personable skills are weighed just as heavily as your technical skills. And I think that Mr. Smith is somebody that really exemplifies that concept. Right off the bat, what struck me most about Mr. Smith was how smart he was. You could, I did a phone interview with him, a phone informational interview with him, and you could tell just right off the bat that like he knew exactly what he was talking about. He was very confident, very articulate. Something that I think has definitely, I'm sure he's like traits he's grown into over the years. And you honestly just immediately understand why he got to the position where he is today. Another thing that really, really struck me was his sense of humor. Throughout our entire conversation, he was cracking jokes, just making it a very comfortable environment for me. And since he eased some of the tension and kind of made it a very warm environment, then I would crack jokes alongside with him. And we were really just getting along really, really well. And I think the ability to really put people at ease, but also have them respect you because of your knowledge is a very like special position to be in, and one that he's managed to get to very well. And I think something that a lot of leaders possess. And lastly, what struck me most about him was how calm and just laid back he was. Obviously, it was just an informational interview, so I wouldn't necessarily expect him to be stressed or uptight to talking to a college student. But I really just got the feeling that that kind of laid back personality style is just him, and I feel like he really exudes that kind of calmness whenever he like walks into a meeting with a client or whenever he's talking to an analyst about getting a project done. I just feel like that's how he is in his day to day. At our interview, we talked about key leadership traits that Mr. Smith feels is very important to have in investment banking. The biggest one that he stressed was confidence. In investment banking, and especially as an analyst, which when you first go into a bank, you start as an analyst, it's like the bottom of the totem pole. There's a lot of independent work that needs to be done, and you have to be really, really confident in the work that you're presenting to managing directors and just knowing that you've done it accurately and you've done it concisely. He said that another really important trait to have is also humility. Obviously, you're going to make mistakes. You're still learning. You're still trying to figure out the ins and the outs, and that's okay. But it's really important to own up to your mistakes and to be willing to learn from what just happened versus like getting hostile or defensive over them. And lastly, he said it's insanely, insanely important to be reliable. A managing director needs to know that if push comes to shove and he needs a pitch book at 3 in the morning, that you're going to wake up and you're going to run that pitch book to his house. That's literally what he told me. And honestly, outside of investment banking, I think confidence and humility and reliability are just three qualities that really apply across all industries. So I really think that's kind of applicable to all things of just leadership in general. I don't think my perception of Mr. Smith changed that drastically after the interview as it did during the interview. I would say that the main perception difference probably would have been just me acknowledging how well rounded he is. We didn't only talk about investment banking, we talked about various topics. And throughout everything that we talk about, he demonstrated his knowledge on across industries. And not only his knowledge, he also demonstrated his humor and his compassion and his drive. And all in all, I think that's what leaders should strive for. Not necessarily those exact characteristics, but just being a well rounded person. Statement that Mr. Smith said that really stuck with me throughout our entire conversation was he told me that I should always display my knowledge. And I think that this is incredibly, incredibly applicable in investment banking where you're always trying to prove yourself. But honestly, it's also just applies to day to day life. People trust other people who are knowledgeable. And at the end of the day, the saying is true knowledge really is power. With the proper knowledge, you can honestly do anything. You can lead any group, you can lead any organization, you can do whatever. He also really stressed on confidence and personable skills. He said you need to be able to hold your head up high, which sometimes is something that I struggle with. And I think it happens a lot in society where people have the knowledge to be able to do a task, but not necessarily the confidence to do it. And it can also happen vice versa, where people have the confidence to do it, but not necessarily the proper knowledge to complete it. But at the end of the day, the ones who will prevail are the ones who at least have the confidence to try to do it in the first place. They may not necessarily succeed, but at least they can try and they have the opportunity to learn from their failures. And lastly, he stressed on personable skills. How well you get along with people and how you're able to build connections and then keep your connections really, really goes a long way. So he told me to always say hi to new people, to always try to keep in contact with people, and to always put my best foot forward.